Thank you for joining us on the Going Deeper podcast, a ministry of Fathom Church in Littleton, Colorado. You will never get to the bottom of the depths that are in Christ for you. And our hope with this podcast is that it will help you go deeper with God. So let's dive into this episode of the Going Deeper podcast. What's up, everyone? This is your host, Kyle Knight, and welcome to the Going Deeper podcast, a podcast where we have conversations to help you go deeper in your relationship with God. I'm in the podcast studio here with our very own missions minister, Karina Bost. Hey,
hello.
Karina. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And our lead pastor, Chris Martin. Hello, Chris.
Guys, it's been like a minute since all three of us have been here.
That's true.
I feel like it's been two, and then so it's good to all be like the three, the team.
Yes.
Yeah.
The triune podcasters.
And we're ending this thing. Karina, how was your cruise?
It was amazing. We had a great time. It was super restful and chill and good family time. So I loved it. Thanks for asking.
You didn't ask how my cruise was.
Chris, how was your cruise?
I didn't take one.
Okay. That's a good answer to that question. Oh.
I mean, don't leave me out of the conversation. So,
well,
yeah.
Sorry to leave you out of the conversation. Today's conversation, we'll be talking about teenage dating. So teen dating. Hey, we've got, as we were kind of discussing before we hit record on this, we've got quite a bit of teenagers at this church or upcoming teens that are kind of in this zone, in this age of possibly thinking about, relationships and dating. And we have a lot of parents at this church as well who will be going through that or who are going through that kind of stage. We also, I think this is really, pretty interesting. Three of us at this table, some different insights here. Karina, we have Karina here who is a mom to teens and adults. You have two adults now?
Two adults.
One married, and you still have another teen going through high school right now. So you've got the older kids. You've got the kids that are really, that's the age we're going to be talking about. And then you got me and Chris, who we've got younger ones. And, but Chris has been a youth pastor. I've been a youth pastor. We've dealt with this sort of thing. And so we just thought this was an important topic to talk about, not just for, I hope our teenagers will listen to this someday, but not just for our teens and maybe some advice for them, but really important for our parents, the parents of our teens or upcoming teens, to hopefully help them with this sort of issue, this time in their lives that they might be facing, giving them some advice, some tips, those sorts of things, but also for our church in general, of how to support parents in this kind of stage of life and how to support our teenagers and our youth going through this stage of life. So we're going to talk about kind of teenage dating. Chris, what are your first thoughts when we started talking about doing this topic for a podcast?
Okay. So this wasn't even a thought that I had until you just started introing. So
you're welcome.
We might need to cut this, but
okay, we probably will,
because I haven't even thought this through. So this is like first draft. Ooh, this is dangerous territory. Okay. So I don't know the stats offhand, but I'll bet if we were to poll our church on Sunday, the amount of people who became Christians before they turned 18 is probably pretty staggering. A large percentage of Christians who are adults in our church, in most churches, I would wager, are Christians because of their upbringing, their involvement in Sunday schools, and maybe even youth group. I mean, that's certainly even as a guy who wasn't raised in the church, that was my story. Was I became a Christian because of involvement in my life through youth group, through Young Life, through high school ministries. So I think it's safe to say that those are pivotal, that adolescence is a pivotal season for one's discipleship journey. Now, if you miss it, gosh, that's what happens. If you got saved when you were 25 or 35 or 45, awesome. But that's a pivotal season in one's spiritual development. Additionally, adolescence is also the time where you're going through puberty, where you're starting to find yourself attracted to the opposite sex. Like there's stuff that's going on physiologically, chemically, emotionally, educationally, all at the same time as something that's monumental spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the reason why this is an important discussion topic isn't just to be like, hey, at what age should I let my kids start dating? Maybe there's some practical outworkings, but we want to shepherd that season for our children, for our youth, as parents, but also as members of a congregation really well, because a lot of what happens in those years is formative for how adulthood is going to look.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know, but I would wager that the trajectory of one's spiritual growth during those years and the trajectory of one's relational growth with the opposite sex are things that often can get really intermingled and maybe unhealthily dicey.
Mm-hmm.
So I say all of that to say, I think those years are really pivotal, and especially when it comes to dating and teens and relationships, exclusivity, sex, purity, all this stuff. These are big ticket items that we should really be considering. Mm-hmm. So that's my initial thoughts on it. I mean, Karina, you're kind of in the throes of it and on the other side of it at some level. Talk to me about like what when we say teen dating, like where does your brain immediately go?
Yeah, I grew up just knowing that the purpose of dating was to find someone you could marry. And so as a high schooler, I was like, I'm probably not going to marry any of you all. So dating seemed kind of pointless. And I kind of took that mentality with my kids, and I really encouraged them not to date. I was careful not to explicitly tell them not to, because I wanted them to communicate with me. And I think a lot of times when you say you may not absolutely date for no reason, they might just date and never tell you. And so then there's no influence or conversation in that. So I have one kid who decided that they wanted to date, and they dated, and she dated basically all the way through high school and got married. Sorry, Haley, I'm outing you, but everyone knows. So
everyone knows.
So, I mean, I think there's those rare circumstances where you can date through high school and get married. And I told her the whole time she was dating, like, no one marries their high school sweetheart. So, and then there's Jordan, who I told, like, hey, I really don't think dating, your emotions are all over the place. Your hormones are all over the place. And can you honestly say you can date someone and not wander into dangerous waters? And so he kind of took it more seriously and did not date. So,
well, I think we do want to say this. Like, I think this is a helpful thought, Karina. We might make some generalizations, but there are always exceptions, right? There's I think there's still, even you read the Proverbs of Solomon and the wisdom in there, and it's not like 100% accuracy rate that this is always going to lead to this, right? That's just not how this world works. So, but I do think we can give general pieces of wisdom, even if there are like I think it's pretty safe to say you're probably not going to marry your high school sweetheart. And sometimes that happens.
Yep.
Right? Sometimes that happens, though it is a smaller minority of cases. So I think that's fair, but I'm excited to have your perspective in this as well.
Yeah. And I guess from my perspective, kind of a little bit on the same lines as Karina too, but even I'm going to go back to when I was growing up in the church, and being a Christian pretty much my whole life, and having, my parents being strong Christians too, and being involved in the youth group and everything like that. The importance of the youth group and the youth ministry and how important that was in my life. We'll put that aside because I could talk about that a lot. But in regards to dating, I feel like I was kind of like in the middle of things of like, I was in a Christian family. We didn't talk too much openly about this with like my parents. They didn't really have strong views on one side or the other, don't date or go for it. I also had 2 older siblings. And so I think in this sort of topic and this stage in my life, I saw my 2 older siblings who dated quite a bit through their teenage years. And I think that it was a little influential, like on me too. I dated in high school. And so I don't really fall into, I feel like there's kind of, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit. There's kind of these 2 camps that you might fall into. One is, dating as a teenager is, never appropriate. And those people that kind of fall into that and say, nope, you won't do that because you need to be looking for your spouse for marriage and you're not at that age or maturity level, whatever it is. And then I think there's this other camp of like, dating as a teenager is okay. And could be some positive experiences through that with the right boundaries, the right communication, honesty, like clarity, all that kind of stuff. And so, so I think growing up, I kind of fell into the camp of like, especially with my family, like it was like dating was okay. And being involved in the youth ministry at my church, and the kids ministry, youth ministry, my whole entire life, I think really helped kind of shape that and helped shaped, even though I did date in high school, really kind of shaped my views on relationships and my views on teenage dating. Now I did date someone in our youth group. And so good or bad, I mean, it was good, but it was also bad. And so it's kind of a mixed bag in that. So that's like coming from my perspective of personally growing up through that. Now being a youth pastor for many years now, I've dealt with a lot of parents and families on both sides of this and dealt with a lot of kids in our own youth group going through a lot of relationship things on both sides of this. And so I think this is a very, Chris, like you mentioned, very important topic kind of for us to be kind of dealing with, talking about here. So Chris, let's start with let's maybe sort of split this up into those 2 camps just for a second. That one camp that's like no on teenage dating, and the other camp that's like it's okay. What are kind of and we could go on for a long time about this, I think, but what are some like positives and negatives about maybe either one of those? Take one of them or take both of them, and then we'll kind of go around.
Okay. I like your question, Karina, of like, what's the point? I think that's a fair question. I mean, I think we can ask that with a foregone conclusion that like, there's no point. That's what that one camp would say. There is no point. Yeah. But what's the point of dating? I think is the right question to start with. Yeah. So if you're in that camp that says no, there's nothing good that's going to come of that. I think, okay, your answer is, what's the point of dating? There is no point. So no. If you're in the other camp, what's the point of dating? Well, it's to begin to experience what relationships look like with the opposite sex. It allows for you to begin to, break out of your relational friendship shell into a, entry level romantic shell. Like there's some other answers for that. I also think that we have to ask the question, what do we mean by dating too? Mm-hmm. Because at a certain level, dating, even the terminology has changed, right? So when my parents were growing up in like the 50s, 60s, dating was going on dates. Mm-hmm. There was so I'll use these terms. Dating was separate from, in their terms, going steady, right? But like there was dating, and then there was an exclusivity of a relationship, and they were 2 separate and opposite things. And even 25 years ago, when I was a kid, that's not what was meant by dating. Dating meant exclusive relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, not like, oh, I'm going to the movies with, with Chad, and like, and that's my date for the weekend. It's like, well,
Chad.
No, Chad.
Not Chad.
Gosh. This is getting out of hand. But that's not what these people are talking about at a certain level. So I feel like we're talking about exclusive boyfriend and girlfriend relationships. And so, Pendulum 1 says no to that always. Pendulum 2 says, sure, go for it, with different levels of boundaries and different levels of, security or fences built around that. But I think that's really the conversation, is not so much like going out for a burger or going to see a movie or going to play mini golf. Although sometimes people will say there's a difference between doing that on a date and going on group dates. And like, there's other boundaries around that. But I think primarily when people talk about dating today, they're talking about an exclusive boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. And I think the one pendulum just says no to that. And the other pendulum says maybe, or sometimes, or to the far extreme, sure, who the heck cares? Do whatever you want. It's all good, because that's all part of like your natural growth and things like that. And listen, as being raised in not in the church, that was my experience. Like, I remember having, quote, girlfriends in elementary school, right? And then I remember like in junior high, middle school, 6th, 7th grade, like doing things in relationships, like thinking that was like a real deal thing. Like that's my girlfriend. That's who I kiss. That's who I like. I mean, as a 11, 12-year-old, that's 25 years ago, you guys. And then I even got saved. So I get into church. And now here's where it gets really weird. I started dating a girl in my youth group, and I'm growing up emotionally and maturing in Christ, all the while in a purity culture with like a pro-marriage culture. All of a sudden, interwoven into my faith journey is this relationship with this girl. And I think there was almost an unhealthy, like what I heard was, you date for marriage. And so I just thought, well, I'm dating her. Maybe she's who I'm supposed to marry. And that blew up real quick. So I think that there's all these pitfalls that are involved in this that we've got to be really wise about. So I don't know. That's my initial thoughts on that. What do you think, Karina?
Yeah, I mean, if you have preteens and high schoolers, they are going to be dealing with attractions to other, and sometimes the attraction comes back at them. And so it's not so easy to just be like, well, do nothing with that. Like, pretend it's not there. As a parent, this is an opportunity to walk alongside them and, speak into their lives, give, from your own personal experience or from things that you've learned. And I think for teenagers, it's great to kind of hear your parents out and know that they have life experience. I know your parents don't seem very cool to you, but they really, they're rooted in God's word. They want to see you be successful in life. And so sometimes when they're speaking to you, they might see more than you do. And like we already said, it's not a clear, like, yes, there's a solid answer, like no dating before 18 ever for any reason. That's just not the way the world works. But I think parents, youth leaders, other people who you trust in the church, they are good sources for you to lean into and lean off their wisdom and just kind of learn from where they've gone and where they've been. And it can be really helpful for you in your navigating crushes and figuring all out.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that is good. Hey, Karina, let me ask you, with having 3, as you talked about, kind of sort of like different stages, and they were all kind of different through this. What was some of your best advice you gave? And you kind of hinted on this, but some of your best advice you gave to each of your kids on how to date, on what to look for, like those sorts of things that would be good for parents to hear of older teenagers.
One of the things Kevin and I said most is you kind of get wrapped up in dating, like you have to date. And I always said, you can be great friends with someone you're attracted to. Like, you don't have to throw that label dating on it, because even if they're the one, like, you can still enjoy high school together and have fun and hang out, but it doesn't become like everything in high school. So when Haley started dating, it was like, he cannot be everything. Like, you have to maintain your relationship with your friends. Like, you're in basketball. Let's put focus on that as well. Because I think when it becomes everything, and then it falls apart, you look back at your high school years and it's just trauma and heartbreak. So it's just, but also it's not real life. Like, you kind of, I'm married. I do not see Kevin 24 hours a day. So we have different interests. We have friends that we like to hang out with. We don't do every single thing together. And I think that's just the thing, as you start dating, you feel like I want to get as much time with them as possible. But especially in high school, don't abandon your friends. Don't abandon the activities that you like to do.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, the dating culture, it's like mini marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's not. It's like a fake.
Yes.
It's not a reality, but it's like, well, this is who I go. This is who I spend every weekend with. This is who I'm hanging out after school with. This is like who I'm I'm going to forsake my friends. I'm going to forsake my guys. I'm going to not do, I'm not going to this study group. I'm going to study with her, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, am I married? Right? Like you're not, by the way, you're not. But it can quickly turn into this. And that's how it's proposed to us in media, movies and TV shows. It's like, that's what dating is it's just essentially like playing house, which is unfortunately a setup for all kinds of mess. Not only if and when that breakup happens, but also there's a lot of seriousness when it comes to, like, obviously you could say, you shouldn't have premarital sex, and that's a big deal. But there's also emotional intimacy that gets really, really serious when you're spending that much time with just one person, that I think is, I don't know, chemically, emotionally, that a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old is ready for.
Yeah.
Even if they think they are, even if I know I am, maybe, but I look back to some of those worlds that I was in, and I wish, like, I've got regrets around those things.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've had, over my many years in being a youth pastor, had so many conversations with youth and teenagers that did see their boyfriend or girlfriend as everything and put everything into that relationship as a 15, 16-year-old. And then, easily see it crumble when that relationship doesn't work out. And so I think that's a huge, huge piece of advice, is to be like, hey, that is not, like, don't put your entire world, everything into your relationship. I mean, it makes me think of, man, even Chris, while you were talking, even when, those little, the little elementary relationships or whatever you have that are, like, oh, he's my boyfriend, she's my girlfriend or whatever. And those things that come with that of like, I have to, like, oh, that means I have to hold their hand, or like I have to stand next to them. And then that progresses is like being a teenager. If you have those expectations, it is like I could remember dating in high school and not seeing my girlfriend for a weekend because I had other things going on, and some of my friends were like, why weren't you hanging out with her? Why weren't you? And it's like, because I'm not gonna see her every single day. So I think it is that, like, it's that, like, pressure that can come with that, whether it's a cultural pressure from friends or just from, you're right, like media and everything, and putting everything into a teenage relationship can be very detrimental. Then as you said early, that these are teens who are, their brains are still developing. They're still figuring this whole thing out. They're figuring out relationships, and they're figuring out themselves too. And, but for the future too, and how detrimental this could be. So Chris, let me ask you too, what are some other, let's maybe talk to parents for a second. What are some advice you'd give to parents who are close to this, who are in this stage right now? What's some good pastoral advice?
So this is what I'm thinking pastorally from my youth pastoring experience, what I'm going to try and practice with my daughter. And I'm like the two I's is what I came up with. Okay. Be intentional and be involved. Okay. So those are the two things that I would say. One is be intentional. And by that, I mean, don't just say, well, we'll just see what happens. Like, I don't think it's right. Like, but I also don't think it's necessary for us as the ministry staff team at the church to kind of give prescriptive boundaries for parents to adopt. There might be some wisdom that we can shoot out, but I think each parent needs to be intentional about what they want to do in terms of their children's dating life, right?
Mhm.
Like what they want to allow, what they want to encourage, what all those things. The worst thing you can do is go hands off.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The worst thing you can do is go hands off. And by the way, I've talked with enough young adults, college students, youth who have gone through major heartbreak to know that they don't want you, no matter what they're saying to you right now, they genuinely don't actually want you to back off.
Oh, preach that.
So like because I know, and by the way, I am one of those who wishes there had been a bit more of a intentionality from my parents around this. Now, God bless them. They did the best they could, but I want better for my daughter, and I want better for our church. So if we have single parents, if we have couples that are listening, I want you to think through intentionally what you want to do. How do you handle it when your second grader comes home with a crush? How do you talk about that? What do you mean by a crush? Like, what does that mean? Is that okay? Is that not okay? Do you shut that thing down hard, or do you say, okay, what do you mean by that? What does that feel like? So I think intentionality is a huge deal. If that means you say, hey, no dating until you're 16, and that's your family rule, then that's your family rule. Whether that's good or bad or right or wrong, you need to be intentional as opposed to just kind of letting go and letting God, because that is a disaster waiting to happen. But then the second I is be involved. So Karina, I love the fact that, and just because I know you guys and have walked with you guys, I love the fact that as Haley started dating, you guys were very intentional to know the boyfriend, to be, I mean, Daniel, we know you. You're a member of the church, so we're out of you too. Like, that's fine. But like,
he's totally listening.
He's totally listening. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, the benefit there was you were intentionally involved. So intentional with your boundaries, but then also involved in that dating relationship. So I think at some level we're like, we don't want to pry. No, pry.
Yes.
Get in on that thing. Know who your kid is dating. Know who your kid is spending time with. Know who they are. Get to know them. Maybe get to know their family. Get to know their parents. Like, do your work. It's going to take work. But gosh, get in the freaking game. Let's go. These are your children. You've only got them for a handful of years, and then they're out on their own. So get in there. I mean, you just, and I know I'm applying that to dating. This is parenting advice. Okay. Intentionality and involvement. You want technology issues? You got technology issues with your kids? Be intentional and be involved. You're worried about their schooling and their activities and be intentional and be involved. They've got friend issues, like who their friend group is. Be intentional, be involved. Like, I just think that's what your call is as a parent. Stop it with this free range parenting, letting your kid figure it out on their own. That's insane because they're children.
Yes.
Even if they're 17, they're children. Listen, even if they're 18, even if they're 22, I mean, prefrontal cortex is not firmed up until like 24 or 25. Be with your kids. Be intentional with them. You'll never regret that. Nope. You'll never regret that. So that's my parental advice.
I had 2 letters also.
Oh, I like it.
And they're pretty similar but different. Mine were conversation and care. Like, I think the more conversations you have, it can get real awkward sometimes. And I can tell you there are times it's just not conversations you want to have. But if your kids know that they can have any conversation with you, man, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing harder as a parent than knowing your kids are keeping secrets from you.
Oh, yeah.
And so, just from the time they're old enough to have conversation, ask hard questions. And I think that's super helpful in the dating, but also just in parenting in general. And then care. Kids do dumb things. High schoolers date and they have heartache. And, they need to know that you still care. Like, they can know you're disappointed in their decisions, but know, like, hey, I still care about you. I care about how bad or great your date went. I care about who you're dating. And like you said, that's like being intentional, investing. We knew Daniel well. He was at our house a lot. We invited him over dinner. He kind of integrated himself into our family. So care about the people they care about. Sometimes as parents, we can see, like this person's a red flag for sure. Right. And caring for your kid is helping them see that. And that's a very hard conversation as well. But Yeah, so those were my two: conversation and care.
Look at us alliterating. I love this. Okay, what are your two, Kyle? Did you just come up with some?
I have no. I have all the letters in the alphabet.
Oh, gosh.
All of them.
This is a 24-point sermon.
Yeah. No, I literally didn't have words, but I want to piggyback off of like what both of you said. Man, the importance of just being involved, being intentionally involved. Again, my experience with teenagers is there was so many my experience with teenagers in the church, of church families who grew up many, many years in the church, who had different kids go through all the ministries of the church. The amount of times I've seen parents not being involved and not having that intentionality, that care, that communication, like all those things with their kids in their dating relationships, in their friend relationships, what they're doing at school, after school, like that kind of stuff. The amount of times I've been with a kid who is just going through something really difficult and then meeting with their parents and their parents not knowing anything about it or who that guy was or who that gal was or whatever. I've been through it way too many times that it's so important to know who your kids are hanging out with, who your kids are liking, wanting to date, all that kind of stuff. And again, it is really important, parents, to understand that your kid might give you pushback on, teenager, everything in life. And they might not like it, but I think it's so important to continue to be involved in that and don't just chalk that up to like, oh, you don't want me to, oh, that's fine. Like privacy. Yeah, you're right. You're a teenager. I'll go hands off. It's so important to like continue to be there. Cause Chris, you're right. You said something that I've seen so many times of like teenagers really do want their parents to be involved in stuff. They might not say it and they might not, they might push back against that. But man, then when they're in their 20s or when they're starting to date for marriage and they have a big issue come up and like a breakup or like a divorce or something like that, they will usually go back and say like, man, I just wish like my parents would have cried a little bit more in everything too. Yeah. Like technology too. But so man, be really intentional, really involved in your kids' lives, no matter what, like even if they push back on that. I think that's super, super important.
Hey, I know we're going long, but so can I offer this as like our last thing? Let's rapid fire. Just last thoughts on stuff. Okay. Yeah. So each one of us kind of just get some rapid fire, like what else? So I've got a few rapid fire things. Okay.
Go.
One, you should encourage your kids to wait to date until their later teen years. I would dissuade them from dating in middle school and even early high school. I think that's a good rule of thumb. Okay. So I think that's an important kind of thing. The second thing is I would encourage your child, your teen, to avoid exclusive relationships and encourage them towards kind of the traditional dating idea. If you're going to allow for that, I think dating in groups, I think going out and just getting to know friends at a different level is a cool thing, a cool way to do that, that does not rob them of other social experiences and things like that. So I think that's a big point. And then the third thing is this: I do think very intentionally, very explicitly, very clearly, very uncomfortably, you need to be talking with your kids about purity. Don't assume.
Yes.
Don't assume. Don't assume that even the church is. This is your responsibility to talk about purity, to talk about sex, to talk about boundaries, all of that stuff. And I would always encourage you to lead with some example. I think sharing your own brokenness, if you've got some stories, we all have some story at some level, but talking about pornography, talking about how far is too far, talking about how to respect the opposite sex, that sort of, like, you need to have those conversations on the regular with your children. So that's my rapid fire thoughts.
My rapid fire is for you teens, and it's kind of similar to Chris's, but you might feel the pressure to date someone, or you might feel like you really like someone and like this is like your chance now or never. But I'm telling you, like, becoming good friends with anyone through middle school and high school, if they're the one, they're still going to be there. Yeah. And I don't think you'll ever regret just being great friends with someone through high school and then dating afterwards,
Yep.
or being great friends and then realizing we're on different paths. So there's that temptation, that urge. I want to hold their hand. I want to kiss them goodnight, whatever it is. But those things, you don't really need them in high school. You can build really great relationships with guys and gals. And I think God will work in those relationships in ways that you find surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all good. I had one for teens, and we've kind of been mentioning this with regards to parents in, hey, talking with your teens, communicating with your teens, being teenagers, talk with your parents, ask them questions, bring things to them. Your parents are busy. Hey, teenagers are busy too. But don't let your parents off the hook. Talk to them about things, bring things up with them. Don't hide things from them. If you have questions, go to them. Your parents are, they love you. And man, if you brought them something that you're dealing with, or if you had a question about a person, a relationship, whatever, I know they would be so willing to and lovingly want to sit down and talk with you about it. So ask questions, and then be patient. Be patient when it comes to kind of what Karina was saying with this, like the pressure of relationships and all this kind of stuff. I get it. I was there going, I've got to, like, as a high school Christian, I've got to find my wife soon. Like, I've got to, figure this thing. You don't have to figure this thing out at your age. Be patient. Know that God has a plan for you. And then, parents, I would just say, like we've been saying, don't give up too easily. Like, don't just, if it doesn't work once, a conversation with your kid, don't just say, oh, well, I tried Monday. I'm not going to talk to them again because they were upset. Yeah, they're probably been being a moody teen that day. Try again. Keep trying. Keep talking to them. And then just know, like, if you have multiple kids, if you have multiple age teenagers, don't just kind of parent and do an awesome job with one and then be like, oh, they'll just like follow example. Just keep trying. Just keep trying. Don't give up. It kind of goes back to me when thinking about this whole discipling thing and discipling your kids and what that looks like. It's just do it. Do something. Just continue. Start from wherever you're at. Baby steps, and don't give up so easily on that. So, man, I feel like this is good stuff.
Love it.
Way to go. Way to go, you guys. Good job. Thank you guys for this conversation. Teens, if you need anything, you can reach out to me, but reach out to your parents. Talk to your parents. Talk to me at church. Hey, parents, if you ever need anything, you can talk to any of us at church on a Sunday. Reach out to us if you need any advice, any help, or anything like that. But we'll be praying for you. We love you, church, and we'll catch you next time.